let's just talk. Let's just tell me the story. And basically, so what happens? Tell me your road, Chris. Okay, so you're 19. You're interested in hacking. You start.
Yeah, well, let's go back a bit further than that. You know, age of 12, get my first computer. Move ahead a few years. Age of 15, get my first modem. Now, by today's standards, these are, you know, very, very slow, but all very usable. You know, and the only thing, there's no real internet at that point. You know, you had to call up bulletin boards, and you know, one of the things that I've always said is that my mum came down to me with this telephone bill that's like 4 or 5 pages long, and she said, I never ever want to see a telephone bill like that, you know, again. And so from that point on, she never did. You know, it was really interesting because I was basically a kid who was bullied. So my peers I was quite ostracised from them. I had no real social contact. So one thing that I was good at, computers. Not many people were into computers back then. You know, not many people were online, if you like. Even if there was no internet, there was still this online sort of community. So, age of 15, I start talking to people. They show me a few little tricks I can do with a phone to negate phone bills, and before you know it, I'm calling the States, I'm calling Australia, I can call anywhere in the world without there being a phone bill. And I'm meeting people. Suddenly there's this bullied kid who has very, very few friends, who then is suddenly opened up to a world of people who have so much knowledge and so much diversity in their sort of social areas that I'm really lucky. You know, I've met people who are really techie through and through, and they're socially not very, very good, you know, when it comes to discussing things outside of that realm. I think I was very lucky to meet such a diverse group of people. So there we go, age of 15, and around that time I start playing around, learning how to make free phone calls, getting really heavily into this and realising that you can break into people's answering machines and their telephone networks and their networks in their computer offices, you know, all telephone based now, basically allowing you to manipulate calls, manipulate how people answer the phone. You know, you change their extension numbers around, you change the answering messages on people's phones, you know, all that kind of thing. Sort of prank, but also usable, because from a phone freaker's point of view, the one thing you don't want to do is have a bill. And obviously coming on from that, hacking, I met up with these group of people, all virtual, it was all through the telephone. In Belgium, they ran a bulletin board called Sin City, and a huge, diverse bunch of deviants, to coin a phrase. They were doing everything you can imagine naughty. You know, there was software piracy and you know, telephone phreaking and computer hacking. And it was because it was at the time, especially over here, that computer laws were really only just being thought of. It wasn't considered a worry to talk about these things with other people. So there was this community of hackers that you could discuss things at, you could discuss techniques, you could share files, you could share sites. And it was kind of like, well, what can you do? And I was like, well, I can do this with this telephone system, and I can do that there, and I can do this. And they're like, wow, that's brilliant. Do you know how to do this? And I'm like, no. They're like, well, do you want to trade the information? So they show me, well, here's a few telephones, here's a few computer systems, you know, you can try this and the other thing, you know. And I said, well, you try that with a telephone system, and then bingo, a sharing community is born. I'm getting all this information, and through curiosity, you start finding telephone systems and computer systems. And of course, being a hacker, to spend any lengths of time trying to break into a computer system, you don't want to have a phone bill for doing that. So you've already negated that, so you've just got free time, whatever time you've got. I don't really have any real friends in the real world, so any time that I have is focused purely on the computer, so I can do pretty much anything with it. And so you move ahead a few years, a lot of experience, thousands of computer systems that have been broken into, and it all starts, the internet starts booming. More and more computer systems are being networked. So it goes from just universities, and corporates start getting on the act, and of course then all the military networks are all integrated and they're all being networked, and it's like, right, I'm getting really good at this is getting a bit boring, if I can hack a site in 10 seconds and I can hack that site in 30 seconds, what sort of challenges do I want? And I read this information about this supposed group of 50 hackers who broke into various army bases and navy bases in the States. And supposedly they found all this information about UFOs, and then they all went missing. And I thought, that's really interesting. I wonder if I can do that. Totally forgetting about the fact that these people went missing. Just thinking, yeah, I wonder if I can do it. And there were lists of these computer systems, the types of computer systems people hacked. It was like, oh, I'm going to try that. Oh yeah, number one, done that one, number two, let's do that one, number three, just work my way through them. I mean, when you break into a computer system, one of the things that you're aware of is getting caught. So you want to mask your tracks. So you go from one computer system and you use that to break into others. So for instance, it always seemed to be easier to break into a corporate or a military computer system rather than a university or educational based system. Why? Probably because everybody who's in the university is trying to break it to change their grades and all the things that they've seen from war games. Now,
so when you say military, I mean, kind of, what sort of places were people breaking into? What sort of, can you give me a sort of a rundown of some of the things you've been accused of hacking into?
Right. NASA, NATO, Air Force bases, you name them, there's thousands of them, army bases, military personnel stations, anything and everything that was basically born of a computer system was being connected, and because people really didn't have much of a clue of security, and there wasn't this implied threat that we all now live in fear of the dangerous cyber hacker who can destroy the country. Even if that's not true, at the time there was no real threat of that. People had this, like a fortress. We believe we're secure, so therefore we are. Nobody would ever dare try to break into us.
So which countries?
You name it. Australia, Italy, Belgium, France. I tended not to hack computer systems based in the UK if I could help it, or if my curiosity could resist, is what I should say. Because I always thought, well, here in the UK, there's a bigger chance of me getting caught. So I would hack into places that were outside of the legal jurisdiction of this country, and places that I thought, well, the one thing with the telephone phreaking, the making the free phone calls, I've completely obfuscated my tracks from then, so they come back to a network that they go, well, we've tracked him back to this telephone, but we can't find it past that point. So I always thought, well, if I'm hacking outside of the UK, then there's much less chance of me being found.
Asian countries?
It tended not to be Asian countries because computer systems were in Chinese, for instance, or Japanese and that kind of thing, and I couldn't read it. Anything that was in standard English text, I'd have a go at it. And there were some systems that I'd break into then that would be in a foreign language, but I really wouldn't spend much time with them because, after all, I'm just curious and I'm hopping from one computer system to the other.
Did you harness the power of one against another? Was that ever the case or not?
Yeah, basically what you do, it made it easier for you to hack a corporate machine. So you'd hack a corporate site or a university, and in one of the examples of one of the sites in my case, hack a university, it turned out from monitoring that system and getting very high level access to it, that it becomes apparent there are a few professors in that university who are doing contract work for the military. By looking over the logs and the email and that, you can see that, well, this guy here goes to these 3 machines and this guy here goes to those. So we already know these guys' logins and passwords, and people being people tend not to change them. And if he's logging into it from this machine, then it's obviously an accepted link between the two. So we just log into it from the university into a military machine, and then you realise this military machine, well, there's lots of people who have all links to all these other military machines, and you use one machine to break into another, and it's it comes to it where you're not so much covering your tracks, but if somebody sees, oh look, this military machine A is logging into us, well they do it 100 times a day, that's fine. As opposed to, why is that university logging into this military station? You know, it's just, from an administrator's point of view, it just becomes non-existent. You become invisible through being totally visible through somebody else's login.
That was basically caused a huge furore in the end. Tell me about, was it just a run-of-the-mill one for you? Were you particularly interested in that one? Did you realise you'd stumbled across something? Tell us the story of that.
To be honest, all of the furore that came out after these machines were hacked, at the time it was just another machine, and I'm looking through it and I'm finding all these interesting things about space stations and about artificial intelligent battle simulators and battle planners, and you know, you're reading things about statistics from accuracy of missiles during the Gulf War. Now this is at a time when none of that was public. You know, you've got people saying, 80% accuracy, we sent the missiles down and they flew down the streets and took their target out. And I'm reading things saying now 12, 14% accuracy, which I thought of it more at the time. That would have been very, very useful information to the press. But for me, I'm just a kid. You know, I'm just playing on these systems. I'm going, oh, that's not very interesting to me. And, you know, yeah, there's some code on here that suggests you can detonate nuclear weapons with it, but I'm not interested in that either. I'm just looking for stuff about UFOs and any sort of conspiracies from these government people. It's like, no, not that one. It's like, oh, well, you know, these people are talking about their extracurricular activities and maybe I should just phone them up and wind them up, and, you know, it just goes on from there. We come to what I eventually was charged with was Rome Laboratories in New York and Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. Now the Rome Labs were the main incidents. They were the ones that the Air Force Information Warfare Center, Office of Special Investigations, you know, they were the ones who were looking at these machines. At the time I'm breaking into them, they've got these guys in this building. They're actually sitting around this desk trying to work out who's breaking into these machines, and they see me coming and going. And then they don't see me coming and going, and then they see somebody else coming and going, and there I am, I'm actually looking through the programs they've put in place to try and see if they can catch me. And I'm, oh, look, somebody's put some tracking things in there trying to catch me. How amusing, you know. I'm really not thinking of what I know now, the real world events. You know, these guys are supposedly up for 23 hours at a time, and they're feeding themselves on burgers and high caffeine Coke, and you know, one of them pulls a gun out on the other one because they're all so stressed and worried about catching these spies that they're sure. You know, the reality is I'm just like tapping away. I go to bed, get up, carry on. You know, and completely oblivious. It's just a game. It is literally just war games. It's all text on a screen. It's not real. You don't see anything. You know, that's where the hacking part of the problem comes into it. It's just text. It's not real. You pick up a telephone, you con somebody into saying something that they don't think they should tell you. You blag information out of people. It's not real. You don't see them. You don't see people's passwords. It's not real. It's not like I've like some of the other characters we know of, that I've knocked on somebody's door with a shotgun, or I've pulled somebody out of a truck. You know, it's totally non-violent and totally virtual in many ways from my perspective.
But when you got into the launch areas or whatever, is that right? You got to the launch code?
No, right. One of the things through telling my story, obviously it comes into the papers and that kind of thing, and one of the big tabloids did a piece on me, and what I'd said to them was I'd broken in quite far into this computer system, and you could view the source code, the effectual, the pieces that are put together in a computer to make programs. You know, it's the basis of the programs to get things to work.
What sort of things, sorry, things to work?
Okay, the source code, which is the language of the computer system. So people write, as you would write a book, you know, they start off with pages. In the computer system, they would write this code that the computer can understand to then, you know, allow us to run our programs that we do every day. So I have access to this, and reading through it, it's not too interesting to me. It's stuff about artificial intelligence system that is for planning air war, that seems to have, in the event of certain things going wrong, that it has the capability to launch nuclear weapons. And I'm thinking, oh, it's not really interesting to me, I'm not too interested in that, but through the story it comes out, I had my finger on the doomsday button, I could have killed billions from my bedroom in Cardiff. Now, that's not quite what I said. I can understand why it would appear that way. But this is a programming area, and it would have to go through various checks of, people checking the code to make sure that it's correct, it's secure. And there's a possibility that after a few of those checks, if I had changed something, and I'm stressing if I had changed something and it bypassed all those security checks, there's a possibility that I could have put something in to effectively control those nuclear weapons. Now the military have stressed that no, it's never been attached to nuclear weapons, and it's never artificially intelligent. It's purely just to help us simulate battles and to plan them.
But the guy at the FBI said something about this. What did he say? Didn't this afterwards? There's a guy said,
well,
what's that?
I was referred to, this came down through various channels, and one of the things that was quite interesting, supposedly from a sort of high-level Pentagon source, classed as possibly the single biggest threat to world peace since Adolf Hitler. I mean, how laughable is that? Me, somebody that wouldn't even kill a mosquito, that would take it outside, and I'm, worse than somebody who's one of the most evil people in history. How laughable is that? It's just not real. It's propaganda. It's a big money-making exercise. And I think that's where a lot of the problems come from in the States. They hype up these events, they go after this money, but the reality is it's just some kid. But then without fear, how do you control your population? There's another side to how the news reported it. There's one that I could have killed billions of people, but the other one is that I took us to DEFCON 3, and it's quite a twisted little tale, really. You've got to imagine that many systems are being broken into, and it doesn't matter if they're military, if they're university, if they're corporate. A machine is a machine, and it's a means to an end. You want to get here, and you're going to go through as many systems as you can to get to it. And that system's a bit faster than that one, so you use that one to try and crack passwords or to infiltrate something. So here we are, going from machine to machine. Now, one of the situations that arose, apparently, is that from one of the American military machines, the people who were watching at the time, the Air Force Information Warfare Center, they monitor Kuji, the other guy, Data Stream Cowboy, breaking into this machine, and they suddenly say, oh, he's breaking into this machine. A nuclear facility in Korea, a nuclear research center. And so suddenly they go, right, we've got real problems, North Korea. We don't know if this place is in North or South Korea. And so the story goes that, Clinton had ordered some bombers up in the air ready to do a preemptive strike upon certain facilities in Korea should the crap hit the fan. Now, I personally don't think that that's quite correct, because a simple search, the way the internet is based, that everything has a record. So as you would look in the white pages, the yellow pages, you'd have an address for a name, very similar on the internet, and it would say quite clearly North Korea, South Korea, wherever. There'd even be a phone number they could phone, but propaganda does as propaganda needs. And apparently they would, the worry was that they would determine that this was an act of war and strike upon America or do goodness knows what. And, for me, I'm just hopping one machine to another. Again, this is where the problem comes in, that you're not aware of the real world consequences from breaking into machines. Now, I didn't put too much thought into this, but it was it was a Secret Service agent who came over to give some pre-trial evidence to determine how the trial would go. And he was the one who was sort of spouting off about this, sending these B-52s up ready to do preemptive strikes. They were loaded and they had these ballistic missiles on it. It was only at the last minute that Clinton ordered them back. And I think, well, either this guy is for real and this situation happened, which, we couldn't put it past America these days to not get into situations like that. Or he's quite well scripted, and that this whole cyber warfare threat is still being pushed. I don't know if this is true, I'm sure only a few people know that. I don't think it is, but then that's just my opinion.
So you do this, and then you actually gave up hacking, didn't you? Before anyone came and bothered you about it, and you faced the consequences. Why did you give up?
Right. At the time, when I was hacking, meeting all these different people, I met a very lovely lady through a telephone system that my friends and I would use to talk to each other, because sometimes if you wanted to call back to the United Kingdom, you couldn't. You could call anywhere else in the world. So we would find these sort of party lines, and not seedy ones like you get in the UK, but in America they were true party lines. People would hook up and they would chat, and I met this girl, Lisa, who would eventually become my wife. Now, in all the planning, I knew that for her to live over here, I would have to sponsor her, and in the sponsorship process, if I had any criminal convictions for anything, then basically it would be a no-go. So that's when it came down to it. What's greater, hacking or girls? Hacking, girls, girls. I think that's just how it worked out, and that's where things moved from there. So I became quite respectable. I still had the urges, but I funneled them into work and into play rather than illegal activities, because I knew what the consequences would be.
How old were you then? When did you stop hacking, or what was the date roughly that you stopped hacking?
It was not long after they actually were monitoring the system. It was 94 where these machines were broken into, and this whole big hullabaloo broke out. And it was pretty much the end of the summer, maybe a little bit later, that I'd actually stopped, because that's when Lisa was coming over. So in many ways, Lisa really saved me from getting into situations that could have been a lot worse, because if she hadn't have come over, then I'd have carried on with all this weight behind me. As far as they were concerned, they're tracking me and they're really onto me and they're getting very hot, and all of a sudden, boom, I'm gone. I'm not to be found anywhere. There's a few traces of me in Australia, and some people find me here and there, and people talk about me, but they can't find me. I'm gone. I'm amazing. The Houdini, I've just disappeared from them. And that's my saving grace, really.
But a few years later, some people would show up at an office you're working at.
So here I am. I've totally not so much forgotten about it, but I'm working. I'm married. I've got no problem doing what I'm doing. A friend of mine, I'm working late nights in this computer department of an insurance company, and he phones me up and he says, "Matt, get to your fax machine, I'm just sending you something." And I'm like, yeah, okay. So it comes through. It's this transcript of evidence given to the Senate regarding cyber warfare. And one of the case studies is Kuji as a spy who's running these rings of hackers, young hackers, to break into American institutions and steal secrets to sell them to China and Russia. And I'm looking at this, and they're like, "Are you scared? Are you worried?" I'm like, no, if they think that I'm a spy, then they've got it completely wrong. They're not going to find me. So I don't think much about it. And then it's a few months after that, I'm in the insurance department. I'm in the computer department of this insurance company, and one of the guys comes down and he's just got a phone call from the one of the finance directors says, "Is Matthew around?" And it's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Can you send him up to the MD's office?" They're like, "Okay." They're like, "Matt, can you go to the MD's office?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, okay." So go up there and just go open the door. There's like 8, 9 guys standing in all black suits, and I'm just looking around like, okay, no big deal, you know. This is an insurance company after all. You go into the MD's office of a big company. What do you expect? And one of them just introduced Matthew Bevan. He's like, "Yes," and shaking my hand. Just like, "We're placing you under arrest for the suspected hacking of NATO, NASA, and various Air Force bases across the world." I'm like, "Oh gosh, okay." Because luckily, after that report had come out, a report about another guy who'd been arrested in the UK in conjunction with this whole thing, a data stream cowboy, a guy called Richard Price. I'd read that he'd curled up in a ball and shouted, "Oh God, no, not me, God, no." And I thought, well, if I ever get caught, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to play it cool. And I'd be buggered if I had to do that. So then they take me back out to my office and they start asking me all these questions about my computer system and, you know.
Where were they from? And who were they?
These guys just introduced themselves to me, telling me that they're arresting me. They're from SO6, Special Operations 6, Computer Crime Unit, linked to MI6, and they're basically Scotland Yard guys. But they're quite heavy on the computer crime side of things, you know. And this was their big break. They finally got the big one, you know. They didn't have a lot of these little cases. They seem to have this knack of losing them. And they finally got this big case that they could really get their teeth into, get their budgets up to prove, you know, the UK is great, we can catch these hackers, because there was talk about extradition to the States, and there was a lot of political wrangling that was done in the background to ensure what was done where. And luckily for me, they made the right decision.
It's amazing. So then, basically, it hits you that what the reality of this is, though. I mean, there's a real risk of what? I mean, what were you?
Well, we go from the insurance company. They've just taken apart the computer system. They're taking things away from the network. They're asking questions. You know, they take me from there. They then take me to my house. They raid the place. You know, they're tearing bits in and out. They're taking what they want. They're asking questions. They've kept me separated from my wife at this time. And she's absolutely going ballistic. She thinks that I've been hacking from work. They're not telling her any different. And she was quite ill at the time. And there was a lot of pressure put on that girl and on me to make me cave. You know, and I think a lot of it was unnecessary and probably, you know, as to say, illegal. But that's just my opinion. Very shortly after that, I think it was the next day, frontline headline news in the local press. Yeah, FBI accuses Welshman of hacking. I'm just like, don't think anything, walk out, get a few copies of the paper, walking back home, you know, and there's vans parked outside, and then suddenly there's press appearing from everywhere that want to take photos of me, and I managed to evade the press very well. And then I started getting these phone calls, and then there's this guy that would phone up, and Lisa would answer, and he would say, "Yeah, is Matthew there?" And she'd be like, "Yeah, hang on a sec," and he'd hang up. Or he'd say, not so much direct threats, but they were very indirect, and they all seemed to be suggesting of things, you know, like, "It's okay, we know he's there, and yeah, we will speak to him," and, you know, just very suggestive without being direct threat about it. And the noises in the background always sounded very busy, like there were a lot of radios about, there was a communications facility, that kind of sound. This guy, he said his name was Chumli Makasuki. Now, I've never been able to track down this guy to find out if it's real, and I have wondered if some of the sources of that perhaps were government-based. You know, if maybe it was another avenue that was taken, because it was going to be a very high-profile case. And, you know, under pressure, people do certain things. And I wonder if there was pressure being put onto me from places that you wouldn't normally expect it, you know, to suggest these sort of things, to put me on edge, to make me go, oh yes, I'm very sorry. The other avenue, if it wasn't people that I believe that it was putting pressure on me, was that, well, you've got the Koreans who know that their machine has been broken into by this guy who's seemingly just been arrested, and you've got the Americans who know that their military installations have been broken into, and then you've got goodness knows how many people in between that know, well, maybe he has got those secrets that we're after, or where did those files go? So there's a real threat that there were people who were perhaps really pissed off with me, or really after that information that I might or might not have seen. And, you know...
So it could have been like kind of, you know, Korean special...
Well, it could have been Koreans, Chinese, Americans, you know, it could have been anybody. And, you know, I was told, you know, don't be surprised if, you know, Lisa was told, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if Matthew would be found with a bullet in the back of his head. You know, these was high-profile computer systems that we're talking about. And it makes me believe that maybe some of the things I was breaking into were things that people really didn't want me to be breaking into. Not just your normal systems, but maybe some stuff that was better not seen.
So there were death threats, sort of.
Implied death threats, you know. You know, are you sure this is the last time you'll see him? And, you know, it's not direct, but like I say, not direct. There was never any direct threat, but it was all implied, which would always suggest, well, if people are really against me, then they just come out and say it, unless there was some sort of legal problems with what they were saying, that if it ever came out, then they say, no, we didn't ever threaten him, you know, and leave it to people to make it.
Your response, though, to these phone calls was, what happened next?
Basically, I moved to a safe house under an assumed name, and just carried on my life from there. You know, the press didn't know where I was, nobody knew where I was. And it was fine. You know,
was it one safe house or?
It was just one. It was just one safe house.
Was that weird? I mean, kind of having to uproot and move to a safe house?
Not really. It was quite a nice place. You know, I still had to pay my rent and everything on it. Unfortunately, not a freebie. But it's a nice place, and it had a garden that I didn't have, and so I could sit and de-stress to a major degree with all these things that were going on. The threat of prison eventually came down to 15 years. 5 years per each sentence maximum. Now nobody's ever been sentenced like that. But, you know, this was government stuff, and there's a good chance that if I could have been the scapegoat or the example, then I would have. And I think every opportunity was taken to try and make me that. You know, reality is, I get less for killing somebody. And when it comes down to it, you know, if I could get 15 years for breaking into a military system and get 12 years for killing somebody, if that, get out in 8 or something, then it makes me suggest, well, that just shows how the system works. People's lives mean nothing. Business is money. Information is money, and money is power. People don't mean anything, and that's the way the law works.
That's right, isn't it? So crisis, and then basically the case was dropped, though, wasn't it? So, I mean, that must be, so it comes to court.
It came to court various times, quite a long time. It was over the space of 18 months. And throughout that period, there were lots of things that were happening. You know, I think I was probably the only person to look over the 40,000 pages of evidence and make comments on them all and show how I could have embarrassed, you know, very, very high-ranking people in this country and America who'd made statements, and in their witness statements could be absolutely shown without a doubt that they'd lied. And the case started falling apart, and the other guy, Deadstream Cowboy, he took a deal. He pleaded guilty to 12 charges. The judge fined him £100 per charge. And then when they came to me months later, they were, through this period, offering me the same deal which legally they found out that they couldn't do. Even though I said, I'm not going to go with this conspiracy. Everything I did on my own, thank you very much. If you charge it with me on my own, I'll plead guilty to it. If you're going to charge a conspiracy, then no, I won't. But the conspiracy angle kept being pushed. It sounded a bit better, I think, for the propaganda. You know, there's a conspiracy of people. One of the interesting things that came up, first of all, it was I've been charged with conspiring to break into a computer. Oh, a computer? Anyone? What? Whose? And then as the charge, it started changing. It was breaking into these computers, and then it was conspiring with unknown others. And it's like, where's all this coming from? You know. But that's slightly aside from the point.
So but basically, they decided in the end what? Why was
right? The final case came to court, and it was deemed not in the public interest to prosecute me. Why? Because they'd just done a deal with a kid a few months earlier where they'd set a precedent. If they're saying that I'm breaking into the same computer, they've got the same crime, even though I'm in a higher court, he's in magistrate's court, I'm in Crown Court. You know, he's got a maximum of 6 months sentence, I've got to take the same charge, can go for a maximum of 5 years per charge. But then they set a precedent, £100 per fine. So realistically, they couldn't suddenly then say, well, yeah, we're going to send him away for 15 years, when this kid's got off with a £1,200 fine. So they put themselves in a real position. And this trial would have gone on for 4 or 5 months. It would have cost millions. It would have cost absolute millions. And they knew, because I kept sending, you know, through my solicitor and my barrister, we kept presenting these things, showing where the flaws were in their case, how they were lying, how things, you know, these cracks were there, and they knew. They knew, and they fought it for a long time to actually give up. But when the judge ruled they've got to make a decision, either they push forward with this case or they just stop wasting his time. And the next week, all over. Totally free, not guilty, recorded on all counts, and I'm a free man.
How did you feel then?
Oh, that was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Just to know that, not so much that I'd gotten one over on them. I told them, you charge me with this, I will plead guilty to it. No, there's a conspiracy, and I think, you didn't listen, you lose out. I get away, you know.
Do you remember walking out of the court?
Yeah, I remember walking out, and I was accompanied by a few tabloid reporters at the time, so they kind of kept me away from anywhere. They said, don't talk to anyone. But I just couldn't help but stop and wave at the TV cameras and kind of go, yeah, you know. And my solicitor read out a statement saying that I was very pleased. And that was basically it. You know, my life began again from there, without this stress, without this worry, and eventually pushed me into setting up my own company.
Is there a moral of the story, do you think? I mean, what do you take away from it? What are the main lessons that you take away from it?
A lot of people would look at this and they would say, as they perhaps might with the other people in this show, that crime pays. And I think, in a way it does. I'll be very careful here, but my point is that government sucks. You know, if the government had not pushed to the degree that they did, they would have won the case. But they had to blow it out of proportion. Propaganda. I know that each time this case is mentioned in the States, somebody's asking for money. And at the time it was a case study, there's $60 million, you know, and then the next time it's mentioned, another $60 million, you know, and this huge fund that is sort of pushed to create this farcical thing that they call cyber terrorism. These kids who are employed by Iraq and, you know, Korea, and they're sitting in their tents, you know, breaking into systems, and at one stroke, if they wanted to, they could deplete the Bank of England out of all its money, and they could shut down systems and networks. It's all total rubbish. It's more fear-induced propaganda, just so that these unnecessary departments can stay alive. You know, and the computer crime department, after failing to convict me, I think every single person, I believe every single person who is involved in my case is now working in commercial industry. You know, and there are other departments that get set up, you know, National Criminal Intelligence Service, and you know, goodness knows what. I think the moral is, whatever you do, don't do it now. If you do it now, you will be screwed. You know, new laws are in place to deal with terrorists. You know, our civil liberties have been stripped from under our noses in the guise of security and looking after us. But I think people don't realise that hacking now is classed as a terrorist offence. You know, a suspected terrorist. You know, I've broken into somebody's computer system, I could be held indefinitely without trial, you know, and great, send me to Guantanamo Bay, I don't know. You know, I was very lucky that computer laws were in place, but they were so airy-fairy, and what I was doing was not malicious. It's been agreed by all sides. I never did anything for financial gain, I never did anything malicious, I never destroyed data, you know. So it's one of those situations, it's very hard to look at it and say what the moral is. The moral is, be lucky. Don't get into things now, you know. It's just not worth it. It's not worth it. And I think any crime, if you're aware that it's a crime, is not worth it. When you're a kid, you're an adolescent, you jump over ravines, you climb trees that are 20 foot, 30 foot high, and you jump out of them because you're a kid and you won't get hurt. When you're hacking, you won't get caught. You know, you're invulnerable. When you're a bit older, you don't climb trees, you don't, you know, run up and down the street and do whatever that you did when you were a kid, because you know there's consequences. And I think the moral is, when you know, maybe you should be very careful.
Are you Kuji?
Right, I had another handle before that. We used these pseudonyms, these handles, and that was Slycath, and that was the name of this weird beastie out of this folky magazine. And basically, I got a bit too much heat. You know, I'd written an article on how to hack into the police national computer, and there were certain people who were upset about that. And the other thing was, everybody assumed I was a girl because it had the word Kath in it. They thought it was Catherine or Kathy. So I thought, right, something short, something easy to type. I was doing ninjutsu at the time. I had a cat called Bougie, and I thought, yeah, something like that would be cool. And I was doing ninjutsu, martial art. And with the 9 cuts of the ninja, the Kuji Kiri. One of those is kind of like the death blow, where you tap somebody on the shoulder. You know, I exaggerate a little bit there, but you know, 3 months later they die of an embolism. It's sort of a slow death. You know, you're in and out before they realise what happened, and I think it was really appropriate for what went down.
That's what Kuji means.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting. And just establish where you were doing the initial hacking. Where were you in Britain, and where were you within that, you know, sort of thing, setup sort of thing?
Right, everything I did was from my bedroom. My bedroom was in a small terraced house in Cardiff. In a nice little area of Cardiff. My bedroom, my crib, where all my computer kit was. You know, that's where it was. That's where I was doing it all from.
What did you actually see at this, the Ohio Air Force Base?
Wright-Patterson.
Wright-Patterson, yeah. What did you see?
Well, the Wright-Patterson is a very interesting story that I could go on for a long time about. But basically, breaking into there, 2 SunSpark machines, for anybody who's listening, buried in the middle of this network, that have information regarding a prototype engine, and this engine says it can go Mach 14, and I'm thinking that's pretty fast. But it refers to anti-gravity device using a super heavy element. Now, I didn't know what that was, so I just thought it was pretty cool, and read it and carried on. You know, I didn't really think about collating some of this stuff. I just thought, yeah, it's pretty good, I'll tell everyone about that. It's just when some of the other incidents, such as that machine was probably, in my police interview, the only computer system that I categorically said, yes, I definitely hacked into that one, was the only one that I was never charged with. Certain names associated with that computer system and other UFO folklore seemed to combine in my police interview. I was asked about these things that, when I said, yes, I know about that, I definitely hacked that one, and I saw this anti-gravity engine, they said, so you didn't see anything? I said, yeah, the anti-gravity engine. And they went, okay, and carry on, and it's never mentioned again, until we get a Secret Service agent, the same person who's come over on another occasion, who's talking about, yes, we know Matthew has never had any malicious intent, he was just after UFOs at Hangar 18. And Hangar 18 was a strange thing. Everyone says Area 51 when they talk about UFOs, but you know, if you take it back, Hangar 18, UFO folklore, Hangar 18 known as Building 18, at a place called Wright Field, which is where the big Roswell crash is supposed to have been taken to. You start going, hang on a minute, what's going on here? Why are the police asking me about Hangar 18? Why is the Secret Service agent mentioning about Hangar 18? Why is all this weird UFO style anti-gravity engine nonsense that's coming from this machine? From the place that's actually named in the main Roswell crash as where the pieces were taken to, you start thinking, that's quite interesting. And it'd be interesting to see where it all ties up. It may be just military testing. It may not. It could be information that's put there deliberately for me or somebody like me to find, a good old disinformation exercise. Or it could be that last little crack of evidence that somebody went, oh, we didn't leave it on that machine, did we? You know, you never know. You never know.